Let's start with a poem from my most recent book. I was trying to explain to this friend of mine in Italy the notion of the Ishtadevta. The Ishtadevta is a personal god, which to my mind is one of the great gifts, one of the very unique gifts of India in terms of its own spiritual culture to the rest of the world. At its best, and it's not always at its best, but at its best, it is a culture that allows you to choose the god most suited to your taste and to your temperament. And you have 33 million gods and goddesses to choose from, almost as many people as there are. And this was at last count, so since that census, the number has clearly increased. And if you don't want any of these gods, you can make up one of your own. And if you don't want that either, you can skip God entirely, because the whole point of the journey is not God. The whole point of the journey is something else. Liberation, freedom, really. But I was just trying to explain the notion of a personal God to this friend, and then found I just couldn't get through. So I ended up writing a poem. How some Hindus find their personal gods. It's about learning to trust the tug that draws you to some shadowed alcove, undisturbed by footfall and butter lamps. A blue dark coolness where you find him waiting patiently. That perfect minor deity, shy, crumbly, oven fresh, just a little wry, content to play a cameo in everyone's life but your own. A god who looks like he could understand errors in translation, blizzards on the screen, gaps in memory, lapses in attention. Who might even learn by rote the fury, the wheeze, the pali, the pigeon, the gnashing mixer grinder, the awkward Remington stutter of your heart. Who could make them his own? After that, you can settle for none other. Maitreyabandu mentioned a poem called Friends, and that's the one I'd like to read next. It's intended to be an affectionate poem about my friends, but it may not seem that way. And as I say, I'm always fully prepared to have my friends write similar poems to me. My friends. They're sodden, the lot of them. Leafy, with more than a whiff of damage. Mottled with history. Dark with grime. God knows I've wanted them different. Less preoccupied, more jaunty, less handled with care, more airbrushed, less prone to impossible dreams, less perishable, a little more willing to soak in the sun. They don't measure up, they're unpunctual, they turn suddenly tuberous, but they matter for their endless distractions, their crooked smiles, their sudden pauses, signs that they know how green stems twist and thicken as they vanish into the dark, making their own way through sticky, vernacular tissues of mud, improvising, blundering, improvising. Since we discussed grandmothers a little earlier, I'd like to read a poem about the last time I saw my grandparents. But of course, like all poems, it's not about grandparents alone. The It's not about what it claims to be about. It's that, and hopefully more. Winter, Delhi, 1997. My grandparents, in January, on a garden swing, discuss old friends from Rangoon, chrysanthemums, the parliamentary session, and electricity bill. In the shadows, I eavesdrop, eighth grandchild, peripheral, half forgotten, enveloped carelessly by the great winter shawl of their affection. Our dissensions are ceremonial. I growl obligingly when he speaks of a Hindu nation. He waves a dismissive hand when I threaten romance with a Pakistani cricketer. But there is more that connects us than speech flavored with the tartness of old curd that links me fleetingly to her, and a blurry outline of nose that links me to him. And there is more that connects us than their daughter, who birthed me. I ask for no more. Irreplaceable, I belong here, like I never will again. My credentials never in question. My tertiary nook in a gnarled family tree, non-negotiable. And we both know they will never need me as much as I, them. The inequality is comforting. There was someone here who told me she lived in Madras for a length of time. Is she here still? Yes. This poem is for you. I have a poem about Madras, and maybe it's the fact that I never lived in this South Indian city. I'm Tamilian, but I never lived there. Maybe it's because I've never lived there, I sometimes allow myself to get a little lyrical about it, in the way that I never would about Bombay, about which I also have several poems, but they're grittier poems. Madras. I was neither born nor bred here, but I know this city of casuarina and tart mango slices, gritty with salt and chili and the truant sands of the marina. The powdered grey jowls of film heroes, my mother's sari, hectic with moonlight, still crackling with the voltage of an M.D. Ramanathan concert. The flickering spice root of tamarind and onion from Mylapore homes on summer evenings. The vast opera of the Bay of Bengal, flambéed with sun. And a language as intimate as the taste of sarsaparilla pickle, the recipe lost, the sour cadences as comforting as home. It's no use. Cities ratify their connections with you when you're looking the other way, annexing you through summer holidays, through osmotic memories of your father's glib lie to a kindergarten teacher. My mother is the fair one. And the taste of coffee one day in Lucca, subtly awakening an old prescription, Beebery, Plantation A, and 50 grams of chicory from the fragrant shop near the Kapalishwara temple. City that creeps up on me just when I'm about to affirm world citizenship. This is a poem from my second book, which I think seemed to foreshadow, I realized when I looked back on the second book, seemed to foreshadow many of the themes that seemed to recur subsequently. In particular, the trope of the female quester, the vagabond woman seeker. Home. Give me a home that isn't mine, where I can slip in and out of rooms, without a trace, never worrying about the plumbing, the color of the curtains, the cacophony of books by the bedside. A home that I can wear lightly, where the rooms aren't clogged with yesterday's conversations, where the self doesn't bloat to fill in the crevices. A home like this body, so alien when I try to belong, so hospitable when I decide I'm just visiting. Since we've done a particular kind of more mellow poem, I'm going to allow myself a rage poem. This is a rant of a poem, so you stand forewarned. It's a poem addressed to a Welsh critic. And I read it here, not because the Welsh critic, poor man, is of importance, really, even in the poem, although I've been quite savage about him. It's really a poem addressed to all those voices around us, and there are as many back home in India as there are elsewhere, voices that are telling us all the time how to belong, voices that give us recipes for authenticity, blueprints for belonging. So it just felt like this is intended to be as much a critique of a particular kind of imperialism as it is meant to be a critique of nativism. But this particular poem is addressed to the Welsh critic. All those voices that tell us how to be woman, Hindu, Muslim, traditional, modern, post-colonial, contemporary, cutting edge. It's addressed to all of them. To the Welsh critic who doesn't find me identifiably Indian. You believe you know me, wide-eyed Inglet type, from a sun-scalded colony, reading my Keats, or is it yours, while my country detonates on your television screen? You imagine you've cracked my deepest fantasy, oh, to be in an Edwardian vicarage, living out my dharma with every sip of dandelion tea, and dreams of the weekend jumble sale. You may have a point. I know nothing about silly mid-offs. I stammer through my Tamil, and I long for a nirvana that is hermetic, odor-free, bottled in Switzerland, money back guaranteed. This business about language, how much of it is mine, how much yours, how much from the mind, how much from the gut, how much is too little, how much too much, how much from the salon, how much from the slum, how I say verisimilitude, how I say brahadaranyaka, how I say varakparam, it's all yours to measure. The pathology of my breadth, the halitosis of gender, my homogenized plosives about as rustic as a mouth-freshened global village. Arbiter of identity, remake me as you will. Write me a new alphabet of danger, a new patois to match the chola bronze of my skin. Teach me how to come of age in a literature you've bark-scratched into scripture. Smear my consonants with cow dung and turmeric and godhuli. Pity me, sweating, rancid, on the other side of the counter. Stamp my papers. Lease me a new anxiety. Grant me a visa to the country of my birth. Teach me how to belong the way you do on every page of world history. It needs a mellow poem, and I'm going to find one. This is the poem I talked about earlier, about finding one's tribe, finding the tribe that I would like to be spokesperson for. I speak for those with orange lunchboxes. I speak for those with orange lunchboxes who play third tree in an orchard of 8 in the annual school play, who aren't head girls, games captains, class monitors, who watch other girls fight for the seesaw from the far wall across the sandpit. remember everyone's lines but their own, who still believe there'll be exams one day that they'll be ready for, who pelt after the school bus, their mother's breakfasts still lurching in their gut. Those with orange lunchboxes. I speak for them. I have several poems that are based on journeys of various kinds. And I was wondering whether to read the title poem, When God is a Traveler, but I think I'm going to read about another kind of journey, which is a journey made on an Indian local train, which for those of you who've made it and survived to tell the tale, you will agree it's an absolutely matchless experience. And this is really a found poem, in a way. I don't really believe I had very much to do with this. This was a person I encountered who made her way quite effortlessly into a poem. Or take Mrs Salim Sheikh. That's the title. Who ripples hospitably out of her halwa pink blouse and sari. Synthetics are so practical to wear on trains, no? Who invokes the protocol of Indian Railways to ask for your telephone number even before the journey has begun. Who unwinds her life story, well-oiled, without a single split end. She's Hindu, a doctor like her husband. The matron warned her about interfaith unions, but she had no doubts, not even in '93, when others did. Her ancestors supplied butter to Queen Victoria. His grandfather, better still, was Court Diwan of Kolhapur. I've been lucky, she says. The gods have been good. I eat and cook non-veg. Many of my friends are pure Brahmin. My sons are circumcised. My heart is pure. I practice no religion, only homeopathy. Over lunch, she remembers the day her mother-in-law died in her arms. I bathed her, she said, and when the body was taken away, I told my husband I wanted to be buried in the Kabristan. It's closer to our house than the crematorium. Take Mrs Salim Sheikh. It's time for a love poem, since you mentioned those as well. And maybe I will conclude with that, and maybe just one more. This is a poem called Where the Script Ends. His shirt is tangerine, the sky, Delft, the sunshine, daffodils. Even jealousy gleams brighter here than broccoli, stir-fried. In this daytime land, the canals speak an unambiguous tongue. We look over our shoulders for just a hint of Venice. All languages are honest here, just none honest enough. At home, he speaks a dialect he's never written in, not even when his mother died. And I know what it is to live in a place where the mind's ink has many tributaries, fermented enough to make all stories and songs seem just a little untrue. It doesn't matter whether he reads my lips or I his Mandarin fine print, because it still makes sense. The old dream. Woman and man under a night sky, and for a moment between them, a single moon. I'm sorry, I did say it was the last, but I'm going to conclude with a poem that is truly the last poem, and I think it makes sense to conclude with it because it's called Prayer, and it's a poem from my very first book, and it feels like the right poem to conclude this evening with. Prayer. May things stay the way they are in the simplest place you know. May the shuttered windows keep the air as cool as bottled jasmine. May you never forget to listen to the crumpled whisper of sheets that mold themselves to your sleeping form. May your pillows always be silvered with cat down and the muted percussion of a lover's breath. May the murmur of the wall clock continue to decree that your providence run 10 minutes slow. May nothing be disturbed in the simplest place you know, for it is here, in the fetal hush, that blueprints dissolve and poems begin, and faith spreads like the hum of crickets. Faith in a time when maps shall fade, nostalgia cease, and the vigil